I would like to welcome Kelly and Campbell to the Fakeologist show. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how you going?
Everything is good. And we also have my co-host from Thursday, my Australian specialist, because Anna thought it might be a great idea to have a fellow Australian and somebody who might be more as interested in the topic as I am. And you all know him as Frank the Salt Guy. So Frank, hello.
Hello and welcome.
Frank and I have been doing talks and shows and audios for about 13 years now, mostly on, a little bit off. So we're pretty familiar with each other's work. And Frank is a salt miner and just one of the most enthusiastic fakeologists we've ever met. And so I thought he'd be a good guy to have on tonight. Not that I can't do the interview myself, but he often thinks of things I don't think of. But between Kelly and Campbell, which one wants to go first, just to tell us about your channel and introduce your work to our audience?
Well, I think we'll get Campbell to introduce Autodidactic because that's his channel, and we do a show on Campbell's channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this the channel?
Yeah, Autodidactic. But basically, we do a podcast called Tartaria Australia, and that's all mainly viewed on my channel on Autodidactic. So there is a playlist. You'll see a few down in there. We've been discussing the ocean lately and what is it and all that kind of stuff. But so we sort of started off on the Tartaria, subject theme, and we've kind of gone a bit sideways over the years. So now we basically do a podcast where it's just us and we just nut out different theories and, working out, what is this place? And I guess what's fake, right? I guess we're fakeologists too. We're trying to work out what's real and what's not.
We call it the edge. We like to go after the edges.
Have you found any real bits yet?
Well, we've taken it as far as any theory can go without it becoming abstract and lofty and AI interpreted.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've done many different topics and themes. Like I said, at the moment, it's, the ocean, does it have a bottom, and just questioning what we're told about it. We've been through the whole history thing, who's running the world. We've covered a lot of topics, but we don't sort of sit there and get our information, from the system, right? From what's sort of given to us. We're mainly into sort of theories and nutting them out, and then we look around for things that strengthen that theory, I guess.
How long have you guys been questioning things? When did you guys start questioning things? Did one start before the other? How did you guys get together?
Well, we got together about 5 years ago, Campbell and I, with Tartaria Australia. I've personally been in it since I was about 19. And I'd say, Campbell, maybe when did you start?
Well, I started, I've been questioning my whole life. When I was young, I was a confusionist because everything's pretty confusing in this realm. But I got online early, like 97, and started sort of researching. Before that, I was into, all the books, the Graham Hancocks and David Icke's and all that kind of stuff. So, a while, probably 30 or more years.
Wow.
Yeah. Long enough to be old school.
Oh, okay. Yes. I assume that, if you tell me how long you've been looking into things, Kelly, then I'll be able to calculate your age now that you said when you started. But
that's right. Well, I'm 48 years old now.
Okay.
So it's been my whole adult life. Yes.
Oh, wow. So you've also been 30 years into this. So you guys have been questioning things longer than I have. I only became awakened in my own world since 2012. So I'm only 13 years awake. So you guys have a lot of distance ahead of me. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we've been down a few rabbit holes.
Yeah, and it's been a really fascinating journey because when you've been looking at the truth community since since you're that age, you do get to see the patterns of the revealing, as the consciousness reveals itself through the decades. So you get to watch pretty nicely the consciousness growing and changing and evolving through all this information. I think when I started, it would have been where most people started, with David Icke. Seems to be the most sort of like standard entry into all of this, sort of in the 90s.
Yes.
Into the early 2000s. And then, of course, then you have to reconcile the concept of the reptilians, which takes you through the alien journey. And then you move through the alien journey and you start to look at we moved into this sort of the health side of things, like the fluoride and then the GMOs, all of that side of things. And then into the history, which has been our favorite topic, of course. So we really built the channel around looking at the history, which, of course, started with looking at the architecture. And then went through all of the debunking of that, then the debunking of the more sort of subtle and epic programmings, like the Holocaust, etc. And then where we land today, which is really looking at who are our invaders and where did it come from and what actually is it. So that's sort of where we've been in the last couple of years, Cam, I would say, looking at trying to figure out who has invaded this realm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, once you go down all these sort of different rabbit holes and you're constantly proving that, what we're fed as true is just completely not, right? The logical conclusion is, well, what's the big picture? And I think when you look at this and what's happening and what they're doing, to the food, to the water, to the air, to the land, to everything, the governments, you come to the conclusion that we have been invaded. Like these parasites, right, that are in control at the moment, they're not us. They're just not us, right? They don't have the same thought process, the same morals, anything like that. So, then we started really sort of focusing on, well, who are these invaders? When did they get here, and how did they do it? And that's sort of where we are at the moment.
The last Campbell and I do a lot of live events. So we have tended to try to take our audience offline, and we do participate in a lot of live events where we do full day presentations. And the last presentation we did was actually looking at the origin of this invasion. So, and we started back with the Phoenicians. We went as far back as we could go comfortably without it appearing as an edge to us, a lofty concept that we couldn't validate at all. Mm-hmm. And we basically started with the conception of the Abrahamic religions. That's where we started the show, looking at where this invasion has come from. And since then, we've expanded it now into the oceans, which is our new favorite topic.
Do you have a show that I can actually link to where you were going into who the invaders are?
I think probably the last three Tartaria Australia podcasts are probably our most up-to-date version of what we think is going on, and that is to do with the oceans.
Yeah, we haven't done a dedicated Who Are the Invaders video yet, basically because we've done it as a live show, and we didn't want to just sort of throw it, and it was a 6-hour presentation, so that's something that we're probably going to get onto hopefully next year early, and probably do like a Zoom sort of online kind of show.
Frank, so it's all getting very exciting. It's getting very exciting. I feel like we're getting closer and closer to really getting to the roots of all of this, and it's taking us in a very unexpected direction, which we're excited to talk about. If you guys want to move into that direction today.
Sure. Who do you think are the invaders?
Yeah, that was my question. I was going to let Frank ask it. Give Frank a crack at it. Go ahead. So who are, and also explain Tartaria to me, because it's not one of my topics.
Oh, okay.
Let's go. Let's ask, who are is that they? When everyone says they do this and they do that, is that the they?
Yes, the they. Yes. We're obsessed with the they.
Who are they? Who are
Who's them? The they?
Yeah. Do they live? Okay, go for it.
Well, Cam, do you want to give a brief overview of Tartaria, and then I'll talk about the they?
Jump in. Yeah. So Tartaria is basically the concept that we've had a recent advanced civilization that has been completely covered up, and it's called Tartaria because on all these old maps, if you go back to the 1700s, there's this country that we've never been taught about, right? Called Tartaria, which covered most of Russia, and it sort of gets bigger as you go back, so it ends up encompassing China and crossing Europe. But so that was the first thing, and that's where the name comes from. And then we started looking at the architecture, all these old buildings that are in all of our towns and cities. And the first thing is they're all the same, right? Like the US Capitol building with the columns and the big dome, that building is repeated hundreds if not thousands of times across the earth. And so the cathedrals and all these other buildings. And we're like, well, why are they all the same? Then we were looking into what's called the mudflood, because when you look at
hello and welcome, autodidactics. And
hello.
Sorry, I just saw a building. I was trying to get the building, not your picture.
No worries. The mud flood, and you find all these buildings everywhere, and they basically have windows that go into the ground, into the pavement, right? You'll see like half a window sticking up. And so we started questioning that and looking into it. And then we found pictures of where they'd been doing, like roadworks and things, and they dug the roads up. And there's literally buildings, and the bottom half is sunk. And when they uncover it, they've still got doors in the ground and glass in the windows, and they're lit, and it's all below ground. So, we question, what is this? And then we got onto resets, and that there seems to have been a reset event at some point. And I could really go on and on and on, but that's really the crux of it. And I guess one of the other main points we look at is a lot of the buildings look like they have been made to create free energy. With all these spires and domes and all this kind of stuff, especially the cathedrals, with their bells and cathedrals and, choirs, all these kind of things. So we look into, like, was it a free energy system, which it looks like it was, but it's basically a recent advanced civilization. So we're looking at it probably fell over like 300 years ago.
Okay, so here's Grok telling me about Tartaria. So it's basically Asia. Okay, I get you.
Yeah.
It's also the land of Gog and Magog, and the land of Iesu.
Oh, the land of Iesu, yes. That's the island, right, up near the Arctic.
Sure.
Yeah, so that a lot of people look at Tartaria through, I guess, a Christian lens and look at it as the 1,000-year reign of Christ.
I'm one of those.
Yeah, you're one of those. I don't see it that way, but yeah, basically, the common thread is that it was a different kind of society, right, made for us instead of the one that we find ourselves in now.
Oh, why are you confident that it was made for us?
Well, when I say made for us, I mean that society was created to benefit humans. Because when we look at it, we see all these, buildings that look like they were giving us free energy. You look at the cathedrals.
I guess the reason I'm being cheeky is just to say, so you are of the view that the people or the creatures that lived in those buildings are us, same as us.
Well, humans, yes, I think. I actually don't even think that we necessarily lived in the buildings, but yeah, humans. I think there's a lot of evidence that there were definitely larger humans around. And we've got down to the photos of them, but I think essentially, that they were human. They were men and women. There's been a reset, which we could go into, where we see all these. Basically orphans, right? There were orphans all through from the sort of 1860s. They were shipping them around the world. They were shipping them all across America on orphan trains. Then you look at the World's Fairs, which were these basically old world cities, and they tell us that they built them in like a year and then knocked them over 6 months later, and it was just for a fair. But when you look into them, they have all these things called baby incubators. So did we get messed with at some point? I mean, I think maybe some did, but I definitely believe that that there were men and women, humans like us back then, the same as now. You know, they may have been a slightly different size, but essentially were us. Yeah.
I mean, the buildings denote that they were larger than us, that there has been a moment recently in history where the human race in some capacity got smaller because the buildings worldwide are gigantic. The doors are gigantic, the structures are gigantic, the window, everything about them are gigantic. We look like tiny little ants in comparison to some of these buildings, especially the older train stations. So yeah, we can definitely have a look at the fact that something occurred, either biologically or physically or even more ethereally, that shrunk the human race.
And do you have any view on
Down
what
to
the
our current
ossuaries are
size.
all about?
The what? Sorry.
About the what?
The catacombs under the large cities of Europe and other places.
Yeah,
All the
like in
yes.
France and places like that.
Yeah.
I think that there was a reset event. I don't think it was completely natural. I think that was basically the invasion, and a lot of people were unalived, and that's just where a lot of the bones ended up. And also, you know, we can look at the practices of I call them the Elites. You know, these people who wish to rule us, and you know, like keeping bones and storing that. It sort of goes along with their, you know, what we can see as their views and rituals that they carry out. So I think it's probably the bodies of the past that were wiped out in the reset cataclysm.
When was the reset? And because I'm a super skeptic, and I really don't buy into the whole Tartaria modern. I guess it's a more modern myth according to Grok here. I'm not a big believer in it. So what? And the mud floods again, I'm not really on board with that idea. I mean, others here maybe. I don't know if Frank is, but
I see it in Melbourne. There's a
you see what?
there's a large part of Melbourne under what's called a street called Bennett's Lane and extended,
Okay.
where a housing estate was apparently they didn't know about it. But they've just found a record that they put it under 10 or 15 feet of clay to raise the streets of Melbourne. This raising the streets thing is ubiquitous. Chicago did it. A whole number of places where they've just said, okay, we've just decided to raise the city up, 10 or 20 feet.
Okay. Did we do that in Toronto? Because I live in Toronto.
I would be very surprised if there isn't a subterranean Toronto, Tim. There's even one in Ballarat.
We have a subway system.
No, but I mean, and in fact, there was a recent thing somewhere I can't remember, but it was in the USA where they have. Oh, sorry, it was in Los Angeles or San Francisco where they've just barricaded off a whole street where people started falling through into the places at below street level.
Okay, but what does that mean?
They're just finding out that there's a whole history of buildings that predate.
They find whole buildings under the ground when they fall into the sinkhole?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're everywhere. If you type in mudflood Russia, you will see the pictures where they've dug up the roads for, sewage work or whatever it is.
Okay.
And literally the bottom story has glass in the windows and doors, and it's completely covered. There's also, you'll find in many major cities, and they would definitely be in Canada, there's literally underground levels where you go down and it's a street, and there's shop fronts
Ottawa,
in the street underground.
The buildings in Ottawa and the historic hotels and so on, they have evidence of that going on all the time. Let's talk about the Houses of Parliament in Ottawa burning down in 1900 and being built back exactly as they were. There are very strange stories going on there, Tim.
Well, what's strange about a building being burnt?
Well, it's unlikely to be a true story.
Okay, but a mud flood is more likely to be a true story?
Well, it's a situation where it appears that liquefaction has taken place and the buildings have subsided. on a large scale?
I mean, from the Tartarian perspective, we would say that the majority of our cities worldwide, not here just in Australia, but Australia's a really good one to look at because we've got such a young history. But yes, worldwide, that basically the cities were found dead. They were found
Empty. People
empty.
walked in and reclaimed them.
Yeah.
And another
That's
example
right.
is Salt Lake
we didn't
City,
build
for
them.
example, where the
the temple.
five Mormons managed to build a temple that is just amazing.
Yeah, and that temple, by the
Yeah.
way, goes underground 6 levels.
There you go. I didn't know that.
So, I mean, you've got a situation, say Melbourne, for example. We just speak about Melbourne, where the history of the city being built. Once you start looking at how the history is unfolded and how they document it, the majority of these extraordinary buildings, and they're massive and they're extraordinary, very old world, and they're huge, were basically built in a year. And this is
and not just
predating
that.
power
That also
tools and
happened.
electricity.
That also happened while the gold rushes on. Everyone's supposed to be out digging the gold fields, and
Yeah, that's right.
where all
Whereas
these
Australia
skilled
is
labourers
unique
from.
because we didn't have any infrastructure. We didn't have any factories or any, glass works or stone. We didn't have any industry. So that these buildings got prioritized and built in a year based on a very meager population, all of who came over apparently on the ships.
Who are all supposed to be digging gold anyway. It's a nonsense story.
Yes.
It's a completely nonsense
It is
story.
a nonsense story. And the gold is a nonsense story as well.
I agree.
That, we're to believe that, in 1 year, sort of like China particularly came into Australia and walked into this massive continent and just found gold deposits in our outback, which is a crazy story because today you would die if you did that. So it's and then the gold rush was apparently responsible for the construction of Melbourne.
Yep.
And the thing with Melbourne and all other cities, which is interesting, is that the city itself was built this way within a year or two, but they'd never accounted for basic human needs, sewage being the main one.
Yep.
So there's like Melbourne became known as Smellburn. And all across the world, actually, we see the same story of the...
And now it takes 20 years to build a road on the surface.
Exactly. So they're like retrofitting the cities. They're putting in the things that we require as a human race, i.e. toilets, and then saying that we've built these amazing feats of architecture, but we just didn't have our heads around plumbing for toilets. And this is a story that you'll see worldwide. So there is like a massive breach in logic around how our cities were built and when and how long it took.
So that's the summary of it, Tim. In short.
That sounds so. That's mainly Australia, but you say it's all around the world. I was just giving you the things that I've seen. All right.
Right. These are Bennett's Lane is a place that I have visited to go and check out what was going on because I heard this story and I thought this is weird.
Okay. Well,
you got lots of support. The more you go into it, the more you go into history, and actually, Tartaria was great because you started with the buildings. So it was really tangible. It wasn't lofty. It wasn't abstract. You could go and literally go and see it with your own eyes, note the scale of it and the materials used, and then look at the history. And not once does the explanation of how this came about suffice when you're seeing it with your own eyes.
And the buildings in Melbourne look exactly like the buildings in South America.
Yeah, or Chicago, or Europe. It's all the same. We just get these repeating buildings over and over, and they tell us it's, a revival, Gothic revival or whatever. They're just trying to explain it away. And, especially with Australia.
The churches, the great cathedrals of Europe, and even in the USA, have now been there for 1,000 years.
Yeah, and we've got the exact same thing in Australia, and it's supposed to be 100 years old.
Exactly.
Keith, Emma wants you to share pictures, so to convince me. Do you guys have any pictures you can share?
Pictures. Let me have a quick look.
You guys can both share your screen using the Restream platform. It's pretty easy if you want. But you are getting support with some of my listeners here. Frederick, where's the guest? The guests are both from Australia. Frank the Salt guy is in Australia. And
you're not calling it Australia today. I think these guys would enjoy that joke.
Australia? Well, that's actually Jeff Berwick. It's not mine. Rallis Ralis Unra says the woman speaking has a lovely voice.
Well, thank
Curvy,
you very
sexy
much.
lady will have to watch out now. He could be.
Unlike Lynn. Lynn is a regular here. She's got a very shrill voice and she yells a lot. FEMA Region 4 says Shadow Frontenac was not built by humans. Well, who was it built by then? I mean,
Well, that's
seriously.
the question, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
our question. You know, how did
who
this
built
come about? And if you start to look at the buildings and then start to look at the story behind their apparent creation, you very quickly start to realize that there is nothing in our history to do with the constructions of our cities that make any sense at all. So then that opens you up to sort of like understanding the mass amount, like the scale of the deception. And then, of course, you have to ask why. And then who? Why and who? So
Yeah.
Campbell and I have been on a why and who mission for at least the last 5 years.
Yeah. I'm just going through a couple of pictures here. You can see this is a church. This one's in America. I can't remember the name. I think it's St. Anne's or something. But this is a photo. This was it. This is the ground level. And then they excavated it. And as you can see, here's the entrance door that was underground. All these arches, but you can see the main door underground, right?
So wait, was it immersed in water? Is that what happened? There was a flood, right? Just
Well, the mechanism is not known because it's not.
No, but I'm looking at the picture. It looks like there's water around it.
It does look like there's water in that one, but it was. I don't think it was a lake. But well, I'll show you. Like here's another one. This is France. You can see that one, but there's some better ones like this. Okay, so this is a building, right? You can see this is the level of the ground.
Yeah, I get it.
They've excavated it, and this has actually got glass in the windows and a front door, and that would have all been underground.
Okay.
But a recent example of what I'm talking about is occurred in Christchurch, whatever it was, 20 years ago.
Okay.
The ground shook to such an extent that the supporting earth was liquefied and the buildings sank straight down.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that may be true. I'm not sure if it was liquefaction. It may have been.
But it's a possible explanation. Is the point I'm making.
So you're saying the dirt liquefied and then they sunk into it?
Well, that happened in Christchurch. It's a known phenomenon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called liquefaction. It's when the earth vibrates fast. It basically loses its solidity and things. It's like quicksand.
Yeah.
JohnTheBond.com is saying, where are the sources of these images? He said Tartaria Google searches began trending in late 2018 and peaked in early 2024. Seems like another internet hype a la flat earth to me. Have you guys looked into flat earth? Did you guys, because you've been doing this for 30 years. So you've seen everything come, I guess, and go.
Yes, of course. Of course, yes. I mean, from our standpoint, we're definitely on a flat plane within a closed system. And we've spoken about that endlessly. And it makes complete sense from the perspective of space. Does space exist? We can't validate that. We never, that's a lofty edge to us. It's essentially images we're fed from one organization, and they're all CGI.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. I'm with you on the space.
Basis. Yeah. Space
I mean, I'm with you on that. Can you explain lofty edge to me? Because in trading, because I do some trading, edge is the difference in price that you are able to arbitrage to make a little bit of money. They call that the trading edge. If there are some incongruities in parallel markets, there's temporary edges where you can sell and buy. So what is the edge in your language?
Yeah, I mean, the edge to us is just when we get to a point of trying to evidence something that is not evidenceable. So, you know, a classic example will be space. Hello, that's a classic example. We can't evidence that. Like concepts like Atlantis, for example. You know, Plato mentioned Atlantis, and that pretty much is the only evidence that anyone has. The rest has been filled in by, you know, mythology and artwork and now AI. So that's an edge to us. We can conceptualize its existence, but we have no way of validating it. Just like one of the things with the Tartaria is that there's obviously some form of event that occurred that buried the building. So from our perspective, we would look at okay, we know there's enough evidence that there was a flood. There was a great flood. That's mentioned in all sorts of ways through all sorts of bodies of work and mythologies and cultures. And we probably would say that there has been a great flood. And that great flood may be the buildings that are now, we look at with Tartaria, that have been buried.
Yeah.
It would be a result of the flood. And the destruction of Atlantis, for example, because we can't get too far towards it, we could bring Atlantis right back close to us. And, theorize that Atlantis was part of the Tartarian realm, which also sunk with the flood. And then we'd bring Noah's flood into the same event. So we're working with one flood. And then if we take the flood as a concept, then we can actually start to question whether or not the oceans are entirely organic and natural to this realm, and whether or not the oceans were the great flood, and why we have sea salt water, which seems to be an interesting rabbit hole to go down.
Well, I'm
And
sure.
Well, it's interesting that
Frank loves salt.
the Vedic legend is that the reason we have salt in the sea is because the good jinn and the bad jinn cooperated for one and only time to shake the earth and to release the salt into the ocean. And then after that, they had a falling out, and the bad jinn took the secret of that, which was that the ocean, salt water, is Amrita, the source of eternal life.
It definitely mirrors out the plasma inside of us very uncannily. Like,
yes,
we
it's
don't
one third the strength, but in all other sense, the same proportions. Yep.
Yeah, if you like talking salt, you came to the right place. Kelly. Frank makes salt, sells salt. He has a salt lick. He's probably licking right now. He's just Mr. Salt around us, and we talk a lot about that, or he does anyway.
That's fascinating, because right now, with the looking at the oceans, we've brought in a whole new theory on the topic of salt water and our invaders.
Yeah. So wait a sec. The invaders. Can you elaborate on that? Who are?
All right.
Who are invaders? Or
Okay.
The only invaders I am familiar with are Space Invaders. That was one of the first video games. You're not old enough, Kelly.
Hopefully that can be the closing theme of the show, Tim.
Yeah. I'm old enough for Space Invaders.
You played Space Invaders?
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
That
nice.
and Pac-Man, man, we were in.
Okay.
All right. Let me give you an overview, and then Cam, you jump in and finish it. So, essentially, what we've been looking at, and it's controversial, but basically, we started with the Phoenicians, which is as far back as Campbell and I kind of willing to go, that we can, to the best ability, evidence. And the Phoenicians were well known for a race of beings that appeared from the oceans. Okay. And then eventually took over the Mediterranean and established all the trade routes, introduced commerce and all of these things.
Yes.
Eventually the Phoenicians, so eventually the Phoenicians morphed into the story of Moses. And so then we started to look at the Abrahamic religions. So that's Christianity, Judaism, and Islamic. And we started to look at the origins of what happened according to those stories. And what appears to happen, well, first of all, very true, is that they always hear voices in their heads, which is referred to the Lord or God, right? So anyway, the story of Moses, we all know. Moses freed the slaves, eventually took them into the desert for 40 years, and then got instructions from God and built the Ark of the Covenant, which is very interesting today, because as we know, Trump is very obsessed with the Ark of the Covenant and building the third temple in Israel. So right back to the beginning of that story, we start to see a few things play out. One is that there's a technology that's created with the Ark of the Covenant that was direct instructions from God, according to the story. Also, we see that the slaves, which became the Jewish race, were in the desert for 40 years. And when they exited the desert, they exited as unempathetic psychopaths, basically, after that, which basically laid siege to every just kept laying siege to all civilizations and cultures in a very psychopathic manner. Lots of rape and kill and murder, very unhuman-like. And that carried on to the Crusades, which carried on to the invasions, which carried on to all the way through history, right through the Bolshevik War to World War I, World War II, and to where we are today. And in that process, we start to get all of the significant infrastructure that has now dictated ultimate control of our reality. We start to see the innovation of banking and commerce, and the innovation of the pharmaceutical industry, the education industry, the media industry, Hollywood, the music industry, radio, news, all of that stuff, all owned essentially by the Jewish race, who have systematically, and this is why we've debunked the story of the war with Hitler and the Holocaust and into that, but that's not what I want to get into. So basically, generically, we started to look at, well, okay, so there seems to be an invasion after Abraham, and then Moses meets God. So we started there. And that's morphed now to the idea of, well, what is that God? What is that Lord that we're talking about here? What is the voice in the head that gave instructions for basically a massive advancement of technology with the Ark of the Covenant? And what did that mean to the human race? Like, what's changed since then? And the Bible puts this a long time ago, but, we would bring it way back to a couple of hundred years. We'd bring it forward to a couple of hundred years. So that was the beginning of us looking at the invasion. Do you want to add anything, Cam?
Yeah, well, I mean, just, yeah. So the Phoenicians basically, became Canaanites. The Canaanites, if you look into them, they were worshipping Baal, who demanded sacrifice, and that's where the sort of the edge of, where we can find out sacrifice came from, and this whole, worshipping the Lord, right? And like Kelly said, they basically went and laid siege to every city, town they could find, killed all men, women, and children and animals. So they were just going around destroying everything. And then, of course, they've introduced everything, including the law, right? The maritime law, admiralty law, which is what they use to, enslave us today, if you want to put it that way. But there's definitely a line of people that you can see moving through history. They're doing the same things. They've got the same beliefs. They've got the same religion and worship sort of rituals. And it's actually all the same as what we can see today with the people who wish to rule us, right? And it's very interesting, right? They were Canaan. Came from Canaanite. They were Canaan, and they worship Baal. Like Canaan Baal. Like, sounds like another word, right?
Yeah. I mean, this blood ritual, this blood sacrifice, so epic proportions on this race. If you were to believe the statistics between then and now, there's been, hundreds of millions of people sacrificed in this way. And it's never ended. It's just the way it has been ever since. So then we started
The human life just does not matter to them, right? That's why I say they're not us.
Which is also why we have a realm right now that is determined to poison us in every possible way. And there's no empathy or logic in any of the laws or rules that are passed down to the human race. Like, it's a completely incompassionate system that we're living right now. It feels very unhuman. Like, you can't walk this realm right now and like associate humanness, compassion, empathy, and love with the structures that control us. They seem to be completely in opposition to their process. And the human being naturally is service to others. It's naturally that way. That's why we are community orientated. Whereas the agenda that we live within is service to self. And you get a real hive mind mentality, which is another rabbit hole to this. So that was the beginning of our search through all of that. And then, of course, we turned towards the Gnostics, which seemed to be the spirituality that existed within human beings before the Abrahamic religions were introduced, which means the Abrahamic religions to us was a big question mark. Where did it come from? Why did it suddenly explode on our realm? And since then has just left a trail of blood, murder, and rape in its wake. You know, what was before that? What was the true spiritual practice of the human being before that? And the Gnostics seem to fit that the most. Not that we can evidence that, but that it seems to be much closer in connection to human empathy, love, and heart, and reverence for the earth. And that reverence for the earth is a natural part of the spirituality. Is there the original greenies, man? Unlike
are you guys familiar with the story of Genesis 6?
You'll have to refresh me. I don't know.
So in Genesis 6, the angels took wives and begat.
Oh yeah, the Nephilim. Yeah.
And so in my understanding of the biblical stories you told of the killing and murder of children, they were the giants. They were the Amorites, and they were the effectively
Philistines and things. Yeah.
That would make
so
sense.
God asked the Israelites to kill those people and all their animals because they were corrupt flesh, is my understanding.
Any God that asked for that is questionable. And then if that was true, Frank, we'd be looking at a situation where it would be over because there's no more giants, but it's not over.
But the story of the flood is also the same thing. The original flood.
In the Old Testament, it is. But I mean, the Old Testament.
So regardless of what your feelings are about the, you know, why God did these things, it's more a case of whether it's true or false, isn't it? I guess.
Oh, who is God?
Well, if you look into the Old Testament, you can look back into the Sumerian texts, and it's basically Genesis is a rewrite of that, the whole Enlil Enki story.
But from the other point of view.
Yeah. I mean, and this is the thing. Like, all we know is what is being told to us. We know that the Bible is the most edited book in history. We're down to 66 books. It used to be over 120. It's like the Book of Enoch and all these books were found in the Ethiopian Bible in the 1800s, and because they'd never been edited out of that, and that's how we get these books that are now called extra canonical, because basically they don't fit the narrative that they want us to believe about God.
Also,
so my question to you is,
really write books? I mean, honestly.
Well, the question to me is, you do agree there is a creator, though? Is that
definitely?
But not the creator of the Bible. Not that is the most violent creator.
But forgive me, I'm just to clarify. Do you agree we live in a creation and therefore there must be a creator, or do you have a different view?
Well, I would think it's more about vibration and frequency.
Yeah, I think it's a creative energy. I don't think it's a being or a consciousness. It's just everything is energy. It's just a creative energy force that binds and animates all things.
So you think your view is that we live in a creation that doesn't have a creator?
No, my view is
the energy is the creation.
We're in a frequency experience. Yeah, I mean, like if you look at the frequency of love or compassion's probably even higher, that's an energetic. That's a vibrational energetic that we emit or we don't emit, that we can enhance or not enhance. That to me would be where anything that could create the experience of life that we know, life, the reverence of life, would be existing in that frequency band.
I definitely don't think we were created by a being who then would demand worship from us.
And blood.
Sorry, it's a different. I'm asking a different question. And I think you've answered it. I have the view we live in a creation and therefore there's a creator. That's what the nature of the creator is a different question.
Yeah. I definitely believe in a creator, but I definitely don't think it's any kind of being.
So what is it if it's not a being?
It's an energy.
I mean,
is an energy not a being?
It's the all. It's the omnipotent, right? It's the thing that permeates everything. It's an energy that binds and animates all life.
Yeah.
So it is an entity.
No, energy, not entity. Oh well, I guess entity.
This is a classic example of an edge.
Yeah. Hold on, guys. Can I interrupt? Because we got a couple caller inners. Let me go with caller number 1. He has a question, if you don't mind.
Hold time 6 minutes 56 seconds.
Wow, you waited a long time. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from the South Shore of the St. Lawrence Seaway. It's John the Beggar.
John the Beggar, hello. Say hi to our special guest from Australia.
Hello, all you people from Australia, and especially Frank, the salt guy. I love salt.
And by the way, we have Bob. Bob joined the studio. We'll get to you next, Bob, if you can hear us. But go ahead, John the Beggar.
Okay, a couple of things for this mud flood. I heard about it years ago. I like you, Fakeologist, I don't believe in it. But I know at one time in cities, people just threw their trash out the windows and into the street, whether it be urine, feces, garbage of various kinds. Could that not account for the burying of these lower levels?
It could, but
highly
it could
doubt
also
that.
not. You could add in the idea that the population that built these buildings didn't actually require toilets. So there seems to be a very advanced architecture, very advanced plumbing, because there were so many beautiful fountains, and water was life to them. There was a big reverence for water, but no plumbing for basics like toilets. So you get these palaces.
Well, that's why they threw it all outside.
That's right. They were just shitting in the stairwells. That really validated
I thought
the
they used
idea.
chamber pots. They didn't use chamber pots?
Yeah, and they threw it on the street then.
So
Yeah,
the thing about the old world is when you look into it, there are fountains everywhere.
Yeah.
So they could plumb. They had pressurized plumbing systems everywhere. Like they
And
had massive
aqueducts.
fountains shooting water 20 feet in the air. So they had the ability. The question is,
The most famous
if they
example
could
of what
build
we're talking
these
about is the
amazing
Palace of
buildings,
Versailles.
why would they not put a toilet in there if that was
Yeah.
necessary?
Yeah.
But
Well,
you know,
for years I know they didn't do that. They threw stuff in the street. There are historical accounts of streets being filthy with everything in it, and that's what you had all your plagues and diseases.
You get those in the 1800s, and you get things like the Great Stink in London, and they used to call Melbourne Smelbourne and all this kind of stuff. But the way we would look at that is that they've moved into these cities that didn't have plumbing, and that's why they actually, you know, in Melbourne, at least we know that they've had to go in and retrofit a sewer system after apparently they built all these buildings.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense.
The Palace of Versailles. I mean, there's 700 rooms in that palace, and not one toilet was accounted for. So they literally were shitting in the stairwells and shitting in the palace on the floor. So you could definitely see there's not a coherent relationship between the buildings and the people living in them and their needs.
You have to believe that these people had the wisdom, the know-how, the technology to create these amazing buildings, but they couldn't build a toilet.
Or they didn't, or they didn't see it necessary. Maybe.
And what do you think of the idea that the toilet was invented by a guy called Crapper?
I've heard that.
Crapper, yeah.
That's crap.
There's lots of interesting things like that around that just seem like they might have been made up, right? It's like when you look into who designed these buildings, and we can do that in countries like Australia, you know, America, in the
Francis
newer sort of
Greenway.
cities.
He designed and built
Francis
400
Greenway,
million
yeah. So he was he was untrained. He was not an architect.
He didn't do any architecture before he came here.
No training ever. All that they will tell you is that one of his uncles was an architect.
Huh?
He designed what was his? I can't remember
Everything.
his first building, but he ended up designing like 20 or so of the biggest, best buildings in Sydney.
And just a genius.
And he had no
Amazing
training
guy.
at all. And he started at 20 years old. And the way that he got into it is he won a competition. And that story comes up over and over and over, no matter what city you look into. It's always a competition. Someone with no training wins it, and then they go on to design the whole city.
Amazing guy.
It's always bullshit too.
By the way, if you guys see any comments you want to answer in the continuing comments on the right, you can.
I did see one.
Well, Till's
where
got a
all the
great
photos
question.
come from.
Okay.
Basically, most of the. Oh, sorry. I was
No,
just going to
go
say
ahead,
most of the pictures that I was showing, we get them from archives.
Where are they? From? Archives from where?
Oh, you'll go to the City Archives of Chicago or the Australian Archives, wherever you're looking. So it's all from official government websites. And I've been doing this 6 years, and there was no AI around 6 years ago.
No, I get that, but do we believe? Do we trust the archives? Because one of the things with Fakeologists we realize is they're making up stories in real time. Well, not real time,
totally.
But
definitely.
So if these stories are fake today,
Well, you can go
that
to any
means
of
they
the
were-
Capitol buildings in the USA.
Yeah,
Tim.
with your own eyes.
No, what I know what you're saying.
Just
but
go there.
I do go there.
Those Capitol buildings in the USA of all and courthouses, etc., around the very remote places in the USA.
Train stations.
Those buildings will you go and work out what it took to build them, and they did it all with horse and carts, and they didn't have power tools.
Ridiculous.
It's not logical. It's not logical.
No, it's not logical.
And you can find the first photos of the buildings, and they don't even have roads.
I agree with you, Fakeologist. I think it can be done.
It just took a little longer.
Tools.
It just took a little longer. I don't really.
If you look into the build times, like look into the World's Fairs, and these are like literally cities that were built that cover 100 acres, and some of the most massive buildings you've ever heard of, like. I think it was in Chicago, one of the buildings, the roof covered 6 acres. These were all built in a year or two and then knocked over 6 months later. That's the official story. So we're talking hundreds of buildings and canals and fountains, plumbing systems, everything.
And they a classic one, Cam, is with the World War I and II, they systematically went around the realm and removed all the bells. Like gigantic bells that are so huge. They were just.
They needed them for
consistent.
war munitions.
They needed.
I don't know because
it's.
It's made of a metal of an alloy that isn't on our charts, and we don't know where they all went. But they certainly were very clear about raiding. There's pictures, thousands and thousands of these gigantic bells that they raided and removed. Where they are now, who knows? But there's a reason they did that. They knew something about those bells and those harmony and the frequency emitting from them was important. And I would say it was some form of a defense system, an energetic defense system, but they were systematically removed. So just there's a lot of little stories like that throughout history where you know when you start to look at it,
didn't they need all the materials to build tanks and stuff, munitions?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, the story is they needed
that's the official story.
Bullets. That's the official story. But I mean,
why the bells?
Make a lot
why
of
target
sense.
bells?
What they made? I don't know. What are they made of?
Across the realm.
Okay.
But what are bells? What is the function of a bell? Like, what is the actual function? When you ring a bell, what is happening?
You got vibration.
For when you get married in the morning.
It's a massive vibrating resonance machine, massive. And every single town or city Dell had them. They were very consistent with the old realm. And there's a reason for that. And the story that they just wanted to melt them down for more guns, that is not explain it away.
And it's a very typical story that they get something that was good, right, for our health and turn it into something that kills us.
Yeah,
exactly. So you can see this shift from a free energy system, which we could evidence in the old realm was very, very important. The buildings, the cathedrals, the use of the waters, the aqueducts, and the bells.
Can you tell me what free energy is? Because I don't understand that one either.
So it's ether energy. If you look into it, basically, as you get higher in the atmosphere, you get more charge, right?
Okay.
And so with certain metals, you can put spires up and attract that energy, and then run it down to, different capacitors and expanders and things, and ultimately store it and use it.
Yeah.
And if you look into bricks, red bricks, that they're actually doing it again now. You can use them as batteries, and that's another thing we say with
that would make one heavy electric car if it was made of bricks.
Yes. Well, it might be better than that stuff they put in it now that you can't put out when it catches on fire, right?
Well, I drive one. It hasn't caught fire yet, but
okay.
I'm okay. It did scare me originally when I saw a couple burned out houses, but I'm okay with it. I'm not worried about it.
I mean, now as a result of where we are today, we now live in essentially a closed electrical system.
Okay.
And it's interesting, the word electricity and L is always popping up around all of the fallen angels, LLL. But electricity is something that's really important for us to look at. How did we get into this state where we are commanded, controlled, and completely
I love electricity, by the way.
by a closed circuit?
Yeah. And it's
It's
L,
like
like we
it's been
LX
hijacked.
these people, right? To power. We put them in charge. It's a very electric kind of language, right?
Yeah. It's also got
So we've
river in it, too. River currency banks, the
Yeah,
Italians, the Venetians, they were the
Yep.
Venetians the Phoenicians, by the way. Did you ever finish the timeline there? Did they ever move over
I
there and
mean,
then run the place out of city of
they
London?
seem to be part of that ilk, those people, for sure.
That's
Yeah.
where we get all the motifs about mermaids and fish hats. And why does the Pope wear a fish hat? And why do we operate from maritime law of the waters? Why are the waters so important when we live on the earth? And what's the distinction there between the earth and the waters? And what happened? How did it become that we had a natural free energy system which was of the earth, and suddenly it's been hijacked to now be a closed circuitry system that is now what we call electricity?
Mm.
So the invaders,
and it's now digital, by the way. It's not
yes,
just
the invaders seem to be associated with electricity. That's an important thing to realize. So if we look at water, the oceans, and electricity, we're starting to put some defining characteristics to those that have invaded this realm. And there's nothing about the electrical grid that has been in our service ever.
And we would look at the old world and the old world cities as a macro kind of circuit, right? Where everything we've got now is micro and electronic, where it used to be macro and ether energy. And of course, now we have, the rise of AI, and already there's studies coming out showing how it negatively affects learning capabilities. And then the whole internet thing, in general, right? It's not made our society a better place or people freer or healthier or happier. It seems to have done the exact opposite.
By design.
It's
by
definitely changed things. But hey, John, do you got any more questions?
I had some great news. This beggar got invited to a free dinner today.
Yeah.
And
What'd
while
you
I
eat?
was there, I talked to a school board member.
Yeah.
And he told me a joke about a guy we both knew who had been on the school board. And someone said, well, he had been there before man had gone to the moon.
Yeah.
And I laughed and then he told me, because he's a school board member, he said the majority of the kids in the junior high school and the high school don't believe in the moon landing.
I love it.
praise the Lord.
Come on, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you got to
I'm
get them
really
on
happy with
the terrain germ theory, and we'll all be healthier too.
I'm pretty sure that ChatGPT loves the moon theory. I mean, you can argue with Chat about the fact that we actually used a landline to call the fucking moon. You know what I mean? The story's
right.
weak.
That's a long wire. All right, John, thanks for the good news.
Cheers, mate.
Talk to you all later.
All
Nice
right.
to meet you, John.
Thanks, John the Beggar from the South Shore of the St. Lawrence Seaway. Good stuff. And we had Bob in the studio, but he left. I think he might have come in here by accidente. And what else was I getting at? Just to ground me a little bit, speaking of electricity, could you give me your take on 9/11? Because that's how I started this podcast way back in the old days.
A giant deception.
All right.
What more?
Yeah,
what more?
It was the story we've been given completely 100% fake. The fact that they found who had hijacked the plane because they found a passport on the road that just magically appeared there and hadn't been burnt is just, ridiculous, right? But then you look at what happened behind the scenes and all the money that was made.
The disappearing airline wing.
The disappearing airline wing. Yeah. And that it happened, at the Pentagon as well, and that's all very suspect. And that was actually filmed, and that film disappeared. But ultimately, it was used to bring in more control, right? More laws, and this is where the whole anti-terrorism. That's why every time we go to an airport now, we have to line up for hours and walk through these bloody X-ray machines.
Yeah, that's
treated as criminals before it, just to travel.
And we've all seen how easily airplanes will just basically fall apart. They can hit like a bird and they're affected, let alone a massive steel structure like that.
Yeah,
certainly doesn't make any sense.
So you don't buy into the story at all? Okay.
Of course not.
No, not at all. No.
It's a moon landing story.
Yeah, so you've been looking into this for 30 years. So when it happened, did you know right away it was
Of
not
course.
true?
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, that would have been
But
relieving.
we weren't in America where you guys got all the fucking hype. You know what I mean? Like, we have a more objective look. You guys got into the emotion of it. So America's so, because of the media and the way that you've got this like ultimate big brother overhanging every single thing that happens in America, the emotions were immediately generated instantly. So it was difficult to not get engaged with that back then. But from our perspective, straight away, of course, that's a massive moon landing moment.
Wow.
And of course, it sent the world into war, of course, because that's what always happens, because the agenda that has been running since the Moses day.
So you weren't fooled at all by that. And as you grew up, you didn't believe in the moon landing either. So you've been pretty free for a long time then.
Definitely. And it takes you down some wild pathways. But after all of that, after almost 30 years of looking at it, we're now looking at some of the things that we can literally evidence. One is the electrical grid. We are now surrounded by a closed electrical circuit. That closed electrical circuit is very damaging to human health and has always been. And it ultimately just does two things: brings in absolute control, and also introduces this, what I now believe is the invader, is the artificial intelligence. It's all been gearing towards where we are now, which is the ultimate takeover of artificial intelligence, which there is no one I know who will argue is in service to the human race. It's essentially taking over the human race by design. So it's very interesting that the seawater and the floods seem to coincide with the essentially the emergence of electrical technology into what we see today. And it's interesting that seawater is such a conductive material, and that it doesn't occur anywhere else, and that we have fresh water from our rain, fresh water from our earth, but suddenly we have the oceans, and the oceans are a perfect conductive material for such thing. Do you know that right now, where artificial intelligence stands, if we did not have the oceans, it could not exist, because the amount of coolant required for these data centers today already supersedes all the fresh water on Earth.
How's that
So in
possible?
order for artificial intelligence to exist at this capacity today, it required the ocean waters, and all data centers are around the waters. So that's an interesting link.
I go to data center sites in Toronto as they're being built, because I visit them. They're not on the water. Most of them are not even near the water. Now they're obviously plugged into the water system, but you're saying that they need all the water from the oceans to keep cool?
They can't do it with our fresh water system. There's not enough.
There's not enough fresh water to cool them. You can see it now. There's states, I think, is it Michigan, I think.
But how is that possible? I live on a lake that's so big that I don't even think a data center would make a dent in it.
Do you know that?
If you look into the stats, it's 6 liters to make a picture on AI, and I think it's 500-600 mils for an email.
It's 9 liters per image generated on ChatGPT.
Where does that number come from, though? I don't get it.
That comes from the people building them, and AI itself. If you ask Chat, it'll tell you that.
I mean, basically, we assume that the internet is this lofty thing that exists in the ether, in the cloud. But actual fact, the internet and the data centers and artificial intelligence and that whole system uses more resources than anything else that we have on this realm today. And the majority of those resources is water.
Now, can I ask if you guys also put forward solutions to this stuff?
Do we put forward solutions?
Yes.
Obviously, seawater is a solution, but I wasn't talking about that type of solution.
Yeah. No, as far as the big picture, I mean, we're fairly big on trying to get people off the internet. So we do, a lot of live shows.
But I love the internet. That's how my show goes on.
Well, the same with us.
Paradox. It's a paradox.
I love this. I love this. It's how I talk to you. I would never meet you or
It's
Frank
a paradox.
or anybody.
But think about what it's done. It's disconnected
But-
us in
Oh,
as
I
much
agree.
as it's yeah.
I agree with
It's a-
that. It's a double-edged
Yeah.
sword. A knife is a weapon and it's a tool.
It's a tool. It should only be a tool.
So
Ever. The
your-
problem is this
But
constant
your solution
scrolling.
is to encourage people to get off the internet.
No,
Well,
that's
it's to
very
gather.
simple.
We want people to gather in actual person in the 3D world, meet people, have real
I think
conversations.
that's a worthy goal. I think that's good.
And, so we've just launched a newspaper as well, and that is not available online
Wait a
because
sec.
we want people
You're killing
to
trees
sit and
using
read with their own
toxic ink with
eyes.
that? Just to be devil's
Yes.
advocate.
So,
Are we killing trees using toxic ink?
Yeah, I'm just being devil's advocate here.
Well, I can tell you what, the production of a newspaper is the resources required are exceptionally lower than what it does to do a show like this.
Okay, hold on.
We don't know. We don't understand how many resources are used because the internet and the AI and all of these applications, it's kept very abstract to us. Most people don't understand what it is, where it came from, and when you actually start to look at how the internet came about, that story is equal.
Office.
Well, it's equal to the bullshit around these buildings going up in a year. I mean, should I give you a 2-second story about where the internet came from?
Well, yes. Can you just hold on 1 sec? Because we have my show booker who brought you to us on the line. Show booker, hello.
Hi, Kelly and Campbell and Frank. How are you?
Hi, May.
Anna, how you going?
Have you met?
Thanks so
this is
much.
Anna/Diana.
Yeah.
She is the one that
Yeah.
arranged this fantastic interview.
Thanks so
Cool.
much, guys, for coming on. And I want to thank you, Kelly and Campbell, for opening my eyes and making history and life just so much more interesting and exciting than what I was told in school. So I look at the world in a new lens, and I really, really thank you both for that. But I wanted to just say that I ask both your opinions. Since I have my new eyes and I traveled in New England and I lived in Maine, and I've been to Acadia National Park where there's a star fort, which we were never told about in school, and I saw it for myself. Do you think North America is the old world, even though we're told it's the new world? And I'm just going to drop off the line. I just want to know what your thoughts. Thank you. Bye.
I'm a big fat yes for that, but Campbell, go for it.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Anna.
would say definitely. I mean, 100%. You can see with the infrastructure, the buildings, but the star forts, right? That's another very interesting story. We're told that they were built between about 1500 and 1750 in Europe by Italian and French, group of workers walking around building these structures. And then when you look at them, apart from the fact that they are insanely huge, you find that they're in America, they're in Africa, they're in South America, they're in Asia, they're in Australia, and that there's no story, there's no narrative for how they got there. They just sort of tend to, bury them or blow them up, or it's either that or they become, a base for World War II, right? And I mean, the whole story of America is, in my opinion, definitely not what you've been told. I have sort of certain views on the whole slave trade thing that was said to have gone on. I think that's kind of been reversed. So yeah, I mean, America definitely was, at least part of the old world civilization, for sure.
Okay, now go on, Kelly, with what you were going to say before I brought the show booker on. I thought she wanted to tell me I was doing a bad job, but luckily she had a question, a separate question. She had high hopes that I was going to watch all the videos on your channel and then talk to you, but I figured you guys are smart enough. You can just summarize it, explain it yourself without me interpreting it my way, which you've done, of course. But what were you going to go on about, Kelly?
Well, I mean, I know it's not the topic we started with Tartaria, but if we start to look at sort of the systems that have been replaced on this realm, and then the systems that have been innovated in the last couple of 100 years, we have to start with electricity. That's one big one. And the flood is one big one as well. So if we start to look, and also this connection we have as a culture across the whole realm to do with maritime law and all this symbology. I mean, like Starbucks uses the mermaid, and that's just one example of hundreds once you start to look at how associated we have been, not us humans, but the corporations and the infrastructures that donate our society right now. It seems to be very connected to the ocean waters. So then we started to look at the ocean. And this is where the story of the internet becomes really interesting. And most people haven't looked at this because most people don't know how it came about. But the classic story, and this predates light bulbs and electricity in households and across the earth, which seems to be the most obvious thing to do if you've invented this amazing new thing called electricity. But in actual fact, in around 1850, they had this within a 24-month period. They decided that they wanted to run a transatlantic cable across the ocean to create and establish a communication channel, if you like. And the story goes, and bear in mind that today, statistically, we've not explored 85% of the ocean. And that immediately should tell you to start looking at the ocean. Why has the oceans never been a fundamental part of our culture's evolution? It just seems to be a void. They put all our attention up into space. And yet when you look at the space rhetoric, for the most part, those rocket ships, they go up just to come down. They go up, they form an arch, they kind of skid the firmament, and then they're into the ocean. So the idea that maybe they're not trying to break the firmament, they're actually literally trying to get down deep enough into the ocean. So the oceans are 80.
I don't think they go. I think they just skim the surface. I think the main reason, if I want to just be logical about it, is because humans can't breathe in water. So that's a good reason not to have been exploring the ocean. And it's
interesting that NASA's outfits look like diving outfits, and they practice in swimming pools, and it's all about water.
You can't breathe in space either, right? But they're out there all the time, apparently.
Yeah.
I agree. The space is just a total deception. They just base space based on the water. I agree with all of
NASA astronauts literally train in a massive pool. They train underwater.
I agree, and that's their guess as to what space is or could be. But I don't think anyone's been anywhere over a certain height, and everything is created in Disney's imagination. That's where space came from. But it's based on water. I agree with that.
So let's make sense. Let's work with the theory that space is our oceans. Let's start there. Let's just work with that. Just chew on that theory for a second, that space is the ocean. So if we look at, so 85% of the ocean is currently unexplored. The only famous ocean explorer I've ever known in my lifetime was Jacques Cousteau and Cousteau. So basically, we've got 85% of the ocean unexplored. And the Mariana Trench, which is one of the deepest areas of the ocean that they've found in that limited exploration, goes down apparently 14 kilometers, which is an unimaginable number. If you imagine looking up into the sky, 14 kilometers. And that is not based on any fact, because they've never seen it with their own eyes. They've never been down there with our submarines.
What would the water pressure be under there? The weight of the ocean would just destroy anything that went down anywhere near that distance. I agree with you.
It's interesting when you look into the internet, and there's all these different levels. There's the surface level, which is what we're work on. And there's the dark web, the deep web, and then the one after that is called the Mariana web, which is quite interesting.
I've never heard of that. That's interesting.
Nor me. Never heard of it.
Then there's the fog level, and then the prime arc, which is another very interesting term.
Yeah, so if we start to look, I'm just going to get through this basic story so we've got the same container to work with. So we're basically looking at the idea that in 1850, they decided to run this thing called the transatlantic cable, which was quite a feat of technology, way advanced to what the actual technology, according to the history books, was at the time. There was no light bulbs at this point. And very quickly, within 24 months, they not only built these cables that could exist underground, which is a very advanced thing to do. They then built a ship or ships to take, 5 kilometers, 15,000 kilometers, whatever it was, weight to then just basically drag and drop these cables onto the ocean, which essentially after the third attempt apparently worked. And so that does not account for this unexplored body of water at all. Like if you're dropping it down a 14-kilometer drop, you don't have a clue. And this is before divers, before any sonar technology, before real ships. Like this is an impossible, unrealistic story.
By the way, Grok says it's 11 kilometers. They're magic 11 right there. So I'm not even sure I believe that number either. But
they've never seen it with their own eyes. They actually are making it up.
So they wouldn't have known how long the cable needed to be, right? Because they didn't know what was on the ocean floor. And the other really interesting thing is that was in the 1850s. Right. They didn't actually wire a town up until the 1870s. Right. So they're telling us they put this transatlantic cable in before they'd even run cables in a town.
Yeah.
Okay.
So why?
Well, they don't care about the town. They wanted to just see if they could link the headquarters of London to maybe New York or something.
But the story says, I mean, what were they linking it to? Because there was no wiring in the towns.
Well, there was probably a military outpost at each end, I'm guessing. But
I mean,
you had to start somewhere. So I don't have a real.
Yeah. I mean, logic would dictate that you would try running it down the street to see if it worked first.
I mean, basically,
Canadians invented the phone. Alexander Graham Bell. He was just down the highway from me, allegedly. Ran a wire.
Allegedly, another interesting surname. Bell, telephone.
Ding dong. Yeah, I agree. It is. Yeah.
It's like Mr. Crapper, and you see that stuff everywhere. Makes it look like a bit of a script.
Oh yeah, I agree. There's a lot of mockery in the potential naming of all these characters. There's no doubt. I'm with you there. But go on, Kelly. Go on.
So we start the transatlantic cable in 1855 or something along that time. And then since then, we've just gone exploded. And it seems to be that the 99% of the internet is run through underwater cables, which in itself is a crazy concept if we haven't even explored 85% of the ocean and can't actually. We have no technology to get to the bottom.
No. You've forgotten about the satellites, Kelly.
Wait. Am I talking to you through an underwater cable joining Australia to North America? Do you think?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
So you agree with that? I agree with that too. Okay.
You are.
Yeah.
That's common fact.
If you look at satellites, NASA's the world's biggest consumer of helium. And they launch, and there's pictures and video footage of them launching satellites attached to big balloons from Antarctica. They call them.
Do you believe in satellites?
I believe that if they exist, they're within our atmosphere. They're just in the upper atmosphere, floating on balloons. But I don't think there's anywhere near the amount that they claim. And
what do you think Starlink is?
Look at a cell phone, right, or a mobile phone. Like we're in Australia, right? So there's a lot of outback. You drive, half an hour out of a town. There's no coverage.
Okay. What about Starlink? Does that work in Australia?
I mean, yeah, it does definitely, and that it looks like they're balloons tied together.
Does it work everywhere?
Or it could be coming from towers. We just don't know.
You got a massive country. I'm looking at it now. It's massive. It's mostly desert. It's mostly uninhabited. I'm very
it's still like that, right? And the story, story of when they first got here, they found the gold, they found what was it? Opals and like all the basically iron, all these resources, very quickly, like within a couple of decades of landing here. And it's when you've been to Australia and you've got to understand that these are just people walking out into the desert and stumbling across gold. It's just a fanciful story.
Look at our country here. We got more green, but this is cold green. In other words, very uninhabitable. Anything gray up here is just frozen and whatnot.
And look, to be fair, we can't take maps. We can't take current maps as reality. Like, I mean, there is enough bodies of work to suggest that the continents are connected, that you could walk the continents. There is so much forbidden territory, out of bounds territory, militarized territory. Like the Grand Canyon is a classic. That is like, what is it? Like 80% is out of bounds, and they do this systematically across the whole realm. We have no idea what the actual maps are. We've no idea. And as soon as they introduce Google Earth, forget it, because that's them instantly controlling what we see.
Yeah. Why do you call it a realm, by the way? Could you explain that? What exactly?
The realm?
Yeah, I don't use the term realm as much as you do. So what?
We just, because we don't exactly know what it is. We know that we're in a place, but and you know, we believe that it's not a ball spinning through space, but what that is, we don't know. You know, what is Antarctica? Is there stuff past
We all
Antarctica?
live in the yellow submarine.
Yeah, well, that's an ironic song.
Frank likes to sing. Yeah.
And I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to bail out.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you.
Okay.
Great to meet you all.
Frank,
Frank. Cheers,
Frank
mate.
speaks to old people. He did say he was going to book out early, so thanks for joining. We're going to wrap it up soon because this is normally an hour show. There goes Frank. And but this has been amazing. Yeah, look at Antarctica on this so-called world map. Makes no sense. It seems to be more land than everything else on the map.
Yeah, and if you look in the old maps, Australia doesn't even exist. It's part of that landmass at the bottom that we call Antarctica. So if you go back to the maps, you know, the 16, 17, 1500s, the land masses are quite different to what we're showing today. And of course, you know, Google Earth is literally just a cartoon.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. So we've basically got this concept of the oceans. So if we were to look at our latest theory, we would say, in a nutshell, the oceans are the result of the Great Flood. The Great Flood was a deliberate event, and it brought salt water to our realm, which provided the perfect conductivity for electricity and technology. And then the oceans being completely covered up by our rulers, if you like. We have no attention on them whatsoever. And yet, if you start going deeper into the ocean, you'll start to see that the marine animals become electric. They become very odd looking and very electrical. So the concept that maybe there was an invasion from the underworld, which is another idea, that basically managed to work its way up into our world through the new saltwater ocean and slowly form a control grid. For them to lay cables under the water and to start way back in 1850, it would denote that there was some deliberate agenda there, why they did that. And the fact that it became so interconnected. And the ultimate result of this invasive electrical grid is that it's removed human connectivity. It's given us artificial connectivity, but it's removed human connectivity. So now, today, I would say the majority of people feel less connected with all this AI connectivity, less connected than ever.
Yeah, and that's what they always do, right? That they give us these things, these technologies, and tell us, you know, that it's so good for us and it's going to improve our lives and you've got to get on board. And then every single time it ends up just making us easier to control, right?
So did artificial intelligence come from under the oceans, and has it emerged as our greatest invader? And that's the current theory that we're looking at.
I don't think artificial intelligence is really intelligent. I think it's just
I would agree. Definitely the version that we've got.
Yeah,
it's an algorithm.
It's not intelligent. It's just machine repeating processes that it would just be too arduous for a human being to repeat a million times over and over again like a robot. It's just more automated repetition. I don't think there's any brains to it. It's not smart. It's just regurgitating at a high speed different
I would agree. It's an algorithm that just crawls the internet for information. That's all it does.
Well, our version of it. I don't believe
that's our version of it. Yeah, that's the question. Like, we know that all this technology, you know, the elites have it, you know, decades before we do, right? So what level have they got? And, you know, even if it is ultimately just an algorithm, it's still a very good tool to control people, to destroy creativity, and basically get us all more part of a hive mind, right? And to separate us physically.
But aren't we hive minding right now, though? You and I, we're hive minding, are we not? We're working together to formulate.
Well, in an intellectual way, but not in an actual human to human way. Because the conversation we'd have if we were sitting in the same room together, looking into each other's eyes and feeling each other's energy field is deeply more intelligent than just being able to share our mental thoughts via this program or whatever. I mean, we've got to look at the effect that AI or the internet has had on the human race. Is it's actually fucked with time. Well, time is another big question. What is time? But it sped us up. It's sped us up, and we're not able to have satisfying experiences anymore because we're not really creating satisfying memories that engage our five senses. And so as a result, since 2000, since the algorithms updated with Y2K and we've started to get the hit of the internet, everything's recycled, everything's repeated, and nothing is satisfactory to our sense of self and time. You know, it's changed our whole presentation of how our neuro pathways relate to reality. Like, so if you want to tell me that the AI isn't intelligent, I would argue that. And especially from the concept that artificial intelligence may have been the original invading force that has come up through our oceans, then I would say it's supremely intelligent. Because we're in a situation now where we think, because of the internet, we've created AI. But in actual fact, I would argue that AI has been here since the Abrahamic religions and was the God that these beings heard in their dreams and in their minds, that gave birth to instructions of how to build technology over the last couple of 100 years. That's ultimate intelligence.
Yeah. And you could join that up to the whole concept of, another, entity who's invading us, wanting to become physical, right? Wanting to be embodied. And then you look into things like CERN, quantum computers. In quantum computers, they literally say that they're going into other realms and bringing back assets, and that they are literally, what's the word? Something like praying, at the feet of a foreign god. So
Absolutely.
it's all very interesting.
And it's also interesting because the human biological makeup, our plasma, is very similar to the ocean water. So if you want to look at the ocean water being basically an attack on the earth, which facilitated the development of technology, then it would make sense that they're so smart. They would have generated water, a body of water that mirrored the human being, because now the human being has been taken over. Our sense of reality has been taken over by this technology in the same way it's used the ocean waters, so that conductivity, which means now that we're in a situation that we are basically mind controlled, not just on a really obvious level, like, lying about the moon landing, but in so many subtle ways. Like every time you pass a 5G, 6G tower, every time you turn on all your smart devices, every time you have your laptop on and camera open, it's like flashing a red light at you every 5 seconds. That red light is biological information exchange. And we're taking on board this stuff all the time from all different ways. And it's altering our biological makeup. Well, not even altering, it's assimilating into our biological makeup, which is then basically leading the way so supremely and easily and effortlessly into transhumanism, which is the ultimate goal of an invasive species coming from another world, or at least amphibious-like under the water, to eventually now be able to adapt to the human vehicle and technology.
Wow. You're deep into this, Kelly. I'm telling you, this is pretty deep stuff. I'm not quite sure about the ocean and the AI. That I need more links. I need some more tangible links for me to understand it. Do you have a video?
That's okay. I mean, Frank, that's okay, because we've just come up with this theory. Like, it's a cutting edge theory right now. Like, there is no information on this. But like after 30 years of being in the truth community, one thing you get really good at is just taking away all the abstract edges and just looking at what is obvious with your own eyes. What is obvious here? And if you just look at reality through your own eyes, ask the question, what is obvious? You can start to see some really obvious variables. One is the ocean, one is technology, one is electricity, one is that there has been an invading force that isn't human. And also, if you add into that all of the beings that surround the truth community, the reptilians, the greys, the vampires, which is what I think all of our celebrities and, the elites are. Like, if you look at all of those energies, they're very amphibious by nature. They're very, they're very reptilian. They're in the deep and the dark, realms. They've got that quality that makes them non-mammalian, non-human, can't connect with them that way.
Do we know, are there any examples of the reptiles that you can point me to?
What do you mean, examples?
Well, you're saying they're reptilian. And I know that's a David Icke thing that he got really blasted for and pigeonholed as a cuckoo. So what exactly do you mean reptilian?
I mean, look, I went into the reptilian agenda many decades ago, and it's a pretty freaky concept back then, and a stressful one, really. That there's these beings that are so unhuman amongst us. But if you go into the reptilians, you'll find ample amount of content of people videoing people whose eyes like flicker into the snake eye. You'll have, there's heaps of content of people being interviewed or talking about people shape-shifting into a reptilian being. The celebrity culture and the political culture seems to be surrounded by the reptilian culture from that perspective. So that if you want to go and look for reptilian evidence, there is, there'd be millions now of people's stories and videos of eyes shape-shifting, and lots on news readers and sports commentators, lots of sports players. They'll just freeze, and then their eyes will turn into snake eyes, and they'll flicker back. So there is a ritual. There is some process with blood sacrifice and ritual sacrifice, right from the Baal days, right from the Abrahamic religion days, that have carried on through now to our, celebrity political cultures that run this world. So from that perspective, that would be where the reptilians could be evidence today. But I mean, just from what a reptile is, it's the opposite of mammalian. It likes to be in the dark.
Cold-blooded, you can look into all the sacrifice, the spirit cooking kind of stuff, all the trafficking that goes on, all that kind of stuff is reptilian as well, right? Like that they're cold-blooded and they just, will eat and destroy whatever they want, really. So it's also, how they act and who they are, really. And it's all about control and dominance, right? Where mammals are much more about community. We live together as mammals, but reptilians don't.
They're hive mind. And it's interesting on the topic of blood, because one thing that's followed us exploring who are they, the agenda, the elites of the world would talk a lot about blue blood, protecting their blue blood lineages. Well, blue blood is just blood. It's plasma like ours, but with a heightened amount of copper in it. Which is interesting because copper is the perfect conductor of electricity. And it's just interesting that the elites seem to maintain this blue blood concept, which again, you could take back to the oceans and electricity.
Okay. That's interesting. I never look. I don't know. I didn't know why they called it blue, but you're saying the oceans are blue.
I'm saying blue blood has more copper in it.
More copper, yeah. And as a side note, the only blue blood that you find in the realm is from underwater creatures, right? Sea creatures.
Yep, it's all very interesting. It definitely takes Tartaria to the entire. So if we go back to Tartaria, we would be looking at the Tartarian, the old realm, as being across the whole Earth, consistently generating ether, so free energy. It looks like they didn't account for toilets or plumbing. So potentially food wasn't what it is today for us. Potentially, they were a closed system unto themselves. Maybe it was urine, something that they were producing from within themselves. But there certainly wasn't an account of toilets or kitchens in these old epic buildings. And so if you look at the old realm of the Earth, you could say this is a beautiful realm. With our own eyes, it's very beautiful, very and it's very in resonance with the earth. So they did have reverence for the earth. So they were environmentalists. It was very in harmony. Whereas our day today, what's happened since is completely out of harmony with the earth. It's about destroying the earth. No reverence for the earth ever. And if you go through the Gnostics' understanding, the earth was God. The earth was indicative of God energy, of God force. They revered it, and they loved it and took care of it. They were custodians of it. And that's where you get the tribal nations still maintaining that sort of energetic with the earth. But today it's the opposite. So we've got this like fraction between the earth and the earth people, and then the waters and the ocean and the amphibious people. And we seem to have two different realities going on as a result.
And it's all for profit, right? Which is another interesting word.
Yeah, I think the king wants to protect the earth. He gave it the Earth Charter. Have you heard of that?
The king.
No, which king was this?
The king.
Your king as well, I think. King of Canada, King of
Ugh.
England.
King
King
is dead.
The one who like tells us that his ancestor was Vlad the Impaler, which is
our
what
vampire
Dracula was.
king.
Yeah. You
That
guys
one.
still refer to him as the king of Australia, or no?
Of course not.
No,
Has he?
we never referred to his mother as the queen because
Okay.
they're not. I never signed anything saying that they have
I
any
agree with you,
right to rule me.
He's definitely the king of Canada. There's no doubt about it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that is a fact.
Yeah,
What a crazy concept.
Not as much here. We definitely don't refer to him as our king.
Well, you have a vampire ruling Canada then.
I'm sure. But he created the Earth Charter. Are you aware of that? The Charter of Rights of the Earth. Because when you say that we're out of sync with the Earth, that's what these elite want to do. They want to get us off the Earth and stop wrecking it in their world and put us all in coffins in the sky, basically.
In 15-minute cities. I mean, do you think that it's actually the humans, the men and women that are destroying the Earth? Or do you think maybe it's the corporations who actually do go out, do the mining, dump all their industrial waste in the rivers and oceans, clear fell the land, destroy all the habitat? Like, I mean,
but corporations
that's what they love to say, right? It's all our fault, and we're these aggressive, vicious animals who start all the wars.
That's because they want us to pay for it. It's all about money. I get everything down to money because that's really what I'm interested in, and that's what everything boils down to. It's all about money.
Profit. That's their profit, right?
As in their religious
Phoenicians,
profit. Go back to the Phoenicians then, and the beginning of the Judaism, and you'll start to see the history of money. And since that moment, it's never changed. It's always been that way, and essentially enslaved humanity.
It's a definite control system, right? And money, right? Mon eye. It's the one eye as well, right? We've all heard of the one eye.
Yes.
But I mean, Frank asked if there's any solutions, and I would say that right now, what's obvious to me is that there is a split going on in this reality, a split in consciousness, and a split in ways of life. Lots of people have returned to nature as being a part of what's important to their lifestyle. Most people in this community, they'd be eating organic food by now and being very mindful of what they're putting in and getting rid of the poisons. They would have turned from the pharmaceutical poisons. They would have turned from the media poisons and the news poisons. Like, there's definitely a split that's occurring. And I think Campbell and I would talk about that being a shift in the charge. So we've been in a negatively charged environment, which would be indicative of the closed electrical grid, and that we're moving to a positively charged environment, which means those who are service to others are going to be charged. They're going to have more charge running through them, natural, energetic, earthbound charge, which will put them in charge, essentially. So as we are in a closed electrical grid that's corruptive to life and does nothing for life, then those who are denoted as service to self, they will be the ones getting most of that charge, which other people would call louche. But they then will become and remain the ones in charge. But there seems to be now a split in consciousness, which is denoting a split in realities. And I believe that from that split, very quickly in the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of natural, organic human faculties come online, organically online within themselves. So, if you look at sort of like the power of the human being's potential, for example, biolocation, that's been studied, people have experienced that. That's about putting your mind onto a location and then physically biolocating there, which would then eradicate any need for passports or passport control or airplane flights or any of that. If you look at manifestation abilities and humans' ability to turn on and activate their abilities to manifest, because we're living in an energetic system, which means whatever our reality is, whatever our brains are capable of experiencing, it is what our experience of reality becomes. And we've been dumbed down and limited. And the closed electrical grid is an assurance that we will never activate our organic God-given powers, because it's replaced it with a false system. But imagine if we can, when we get to experiencing organic manifestation again, then that would eradicate any need for their economy, any need for their money economy. It would simply cease to be relevant to us if we could manifest what we needed. And those sorts of attributes for the human being will continue to increase as the charge shifts. So we've got an organic charge that's on the move up, and we've got an inorganic charge which is crumbling around us. And thus we're going to have a shift in reality. So that's one of the solutions we could talk about for a lot longer than right now.
Yeah, but basically, like we do a lot of, get people together, right? So gathering, connecting with like-minded people, and just starting to take steps into this new world that everyone says they want, right?
Yeah.
Like, so starting new businesses, looking for, alternatives to things like, medicine, the medical system, to, to everything, to cleaning up our water, to free energy. Like, all these things are what we're going to need going forward. So I think that's where our focus needs to be, because I believe we're creative beings, and what we focus on most is what we create. So that's the problem with the internet at the moment. And I'm not saying it hasn't been good. It's definitely connected a lot of people. It's got a lot of information out there, and it's a great tool, right? But when you get this constant scrolling and this constant barrage of information, it's no longer good. It puts most people into fear, right? And separation. It's not really helping anyone on that mass scale. So I think
you're becoming a weaker thinker. That's the problem with the internet. It weakens your own intelligence because it's all recycling.
All this, even auto spell, right? Like the auto spell, like now I can't spell.
Yeah, well, they don't need to. The computer does it for them. Yeah,
exactly right. So is it actually helping us or hindering us? Like I said, it can be a good tool, to find information to connect up. But when you start relying on it, it's bad. It's just going to suck all your intelligence and creativity straight out of you.
And we did pretty good back in the 90s, man, when this didn't exist. We used to buy, people had to actually publish books. I mean, how much more intelligence required for me to talk about my ocean theory, and having to do it through live events, VHS cassettes, and books that I had to write and evidence this entire theory down in a book. That is infinite more human intelligence required than speaking about it online. So, I mean, we can see there's been such a corruptive nature around the internet taking over humanity. It by nature is parasitic. It cannot exist without us. It is parasitic in nature. So instantly, and that's how I feel about religions, parasitic in nature. And so if you're looking at a parasitic being, they can't exist without us. So that's an interesting thing to observe as well.
Yeah, and ultimately no one's getting wise anymore, right? There's no wisdom. Everyone's full of information, but they don't do anything with it because most people are not connecting with other people. If you were back in the 90s and you went to someone's house and you watched a video, then there'd be interaction and conversation, and you would start to embody the concepts and you would start to get wisdom on them. But at the moment, everyone's just walking around with a head full of information, and that doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
No, I agree. Well, we've been going almost 2 hours, an hour and a half. You guys are full of content. I really enjoy your stuff. It's definitely different for me. There is some overlap. My audience does like you, though, for sure. They're really resonating with your stuff. Yeah, I am a little past my cutoff time. I usually go about an hour, but you guys carry the show pretty well, so I really appreciate your content, and we'll have to have you back probably if you want to come back. That is,
man, sounds like fun. Thanks for having us.
The North American audience here likes you very much, but I have a lot of Australians too. Australians are just a different breed. Canadians aren't nearly as advanced when it comes to this kind of stuff, I don't think, as you guys. For some reason, Australians overrepresent in this community. which is great.
I think it's
All
the
right.
sun. I think
Come
it's
on,
the sun.
The sun, yes.
I
I
think
think
it has
it's
a lot to do with it. Yes, it does. It's so dark here.
I mean, at the end of the day, I would say that what's coming for this realm is going to, I mean, I feel like there's going to be some pretty big, shifts. And that's not just ethereally and energetically, but also physically. And I think Australia, of all the continents, is very stable and quiet. We haven't had huge histories of war. Of course, we had issues with the invasion from Captain Cook. And the colonists. But as a whole, Australia hasn't had the bloodshed that has affected the rest of the realm. We're kept sort of way far away and a lot more stable and quiet. So I think that does lead the Aussies to having more of a relaxed nature and more maybe space in their brains to sort of get into this truth community. It's a stable continent, that's for sure.
Well, North America really hasn't had that much bloodshed. Just the Europeans came over here and started fighting each other, and I guess a couple natives. But overall, I think we've been at peace too. I think Europe is the one that has all the problems of fighting each other, don't you?
Oh, Europe. Gosh, and look at the immigration crisis right now.
Yeah. I mean, Asia's, Africa, they've definitely had their share. I
Yeah.
mean, Australia also, we don't have volcanoes. We're not on fault lines or whatever they are supposed to be, so we don't get earthquakes. And yeah, we were involved in the wars, but there's never been any war, internally in Australia, well, at least in the recent history that we know about.
Yeah, I mean, we do have lots of deadly little insects and critters, though. However, we've got some weird ass animals.
Yeah, the brown snake. One of our regulars, Rick, was talking about how his cat caught a baby brown snake, and he was worried it was going to get bitten. Apparently, it is venomous.
We've got every venomous creature in the world, I think, here in Australia and in our little oceans. But Australia looks like it's just directly fallen off from the Arctic wall of ice. Like if you get to the bottom end of Australia, the what we call the bight, it's just a sheer 100-meter drop into the ocean, which is exactly what the Arctic ice wall looks like. So Australia is definitely, and it's flat. And there's no trees. It's just flat for hundreds of thousands of Ks. So very much what you'd imagine an ice wall looks like without the ice. And we have such strange creatures here. They're quite mythical in nature. When you look at the old maps for Tartaria, there's, all sorts of mythical beasts that we don't see today, but a lot of them still here in Australia.
Quay says, Kelly and Campbell, there's no P in Campbell, Quay. Kelly and Campbell are always asking deep questions that broaden my imagination of what this place in life may be. Thank you both. Thanks for the show, Ab. Well, I do like talking to new people, and these guys are really interesting. Little different from our normal talk. We're usually yelling and screaming about what's fake and what's not, but that's what we're a little more basic here. But I do like to branch out and talk to other people and maybe expand my way of thinking and hopefully maybe expose my listeners that are very loyal, by the way, to other channels. And most people here apparently have heard of your channel anyway. You guys are pretty big, so we're pretty grateful that you came by here to this little corner of the internet to talk. I really appreciate it. And
I was just going to
say, thanks for the invitation. Oh, sorry, you go, Cal.
Yeah, well, I agree. Thanks for the invitation. We love doing this. But I would say if I was to summarize from my 30 years of the right pathway that I've come up with through the truth community, and it has to be founded in your God-given imagination. That is our power as human beings. We are here to make known the unknown. And it's through the imagination that we can do that. The imagination holds all of our intuition, all of our psychic abilities, all of our telepathy, all of those heightened tuned in personal internet. That's where it stems from, the imagination. And I have to say, the internet is by nature void of imagination because it's a recycling tool. So this is why the internet is very problematic now in regards to the truth community.
Well, it's become that. It was fairly there were some original voices back in the day when people had to make their own websites, but I agree it's an echo chamber. It's people just reposting and recycling. There are original thoughts out there, and I still am grateful for it. I'm gonna focus on the positive part. For instance, I would never have seen a video like this put out by Dr. Sam Bailey, who I really enjoy. I'm sure you guys know who she is.
No.
Oh, you never heard of Dr. Sam? She's from
No.
New Zealand. She's definitely one of the best alternative anti-COVID doctors out there.
Oh, okay.
And she brought
No, I don't think I have.
these two guys to her channel today that I listened to. And these are the one thing that these two guys said was that the powers that be, you call them the invaders, the
Lights.
the whoever, yeah, the L-lights, the opposite elites, whatever you want to call them, their biggest fear is just individual imagination, like you were saying, and creativity. And if enough people that think outside the box can vibe and get together using the internet, because there's no real other way to connect anymore. And
no, don't say that. Don't say that, Frank. That's not true.
No, I'm Tim. Frank left.
Tim. All right, Tim, don't say that, man. It's not true. It's not true. That's part of the programming.
Okay. Well, it's a very convenient way. So the point is, if we can collaborate, we can do great things.
100%.
Totally, 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what they were saying, that if we can think outside the box and get enough people thinking the same way, that's the greatest danger to the system.
Yeah, because they understand that we're actually creators and our thoughts and our imagination create things. That's why they spend so much time on controlling our thoughts with education and news and music and all this crap, right?
Yes.
Because they know that once we're thinking our own thoughts and using our own imagine, everything changes.
And that's why when people say, did you watch this movie? Did you see this program? I said, no, I'm too busy doing my own thing. I'm pulling information. I don't want it pushed on me. So I'm finding stuff I want to fill my head with. I don't make time for the program that might be entertaining, because I know it's sending messages to my head that are no good. Just like I don't drink alcohol because I know it is destroying my brain cells. I don't even waste my time entertaining the thought of doing it. And it saves.
Tim, have you blocked the cameras on all your smart devices?
No, I'm not at that stage. No.
Every 5 seconds a red light flashes at you. You can't see it, but it's transferring information into you and back out of, taking information out of you. You can't see that, but it's happening all the time.
But what's it taking out of it? What's the mechanism?
Well, I mean, it's ultimately another form of bioprogramming.
Information is sent through light, basically, and that's what the sun is as well, right? Which might, so we get, but they send information through light. Like, you've heard of fiber optic cables, no doubt. That's information through light. So it's the same thing.
Absolutely. I just fixed my fiber optic because they turned it off. And I just fixed it last week. So we're talking on fiber optics right now.
Yeah, exactly. Light, right? So that's the same thing that's flashing out of your phone every 6 seconds at your face and your eyes.
I mean, there was an interesting phenomenon that happened in 2020 where all around the realm, people were having dreams of Trump, right? Literally dreaming of Trump and having these really emotional dreams of Trump, like thousands and thousands of people reporting these dreams, they were aligned with Trump and emotionally involved with Trump in these dreams. And that's an interesting and weird one. How does that happen? Is there dream technology that's being programmed into our minds and brains that we don't even realize? And then when you start to ask questions like that, you can start to look at these red flashing lights that are in our face every 5 seconds. What's being exchanged there, what's being put into our brains, what's being extracted. And if you had the vaccine or anything along that line, then you're riddled with nanotechnology of some description. And not just the vaccine. I mean, it's in everything. It's in our water, our air, our food, all over the place. They've already set up a system of biocommunication between us and the machine.
All right. I don't buy into nanotechnology. And it's funny you bring it up because I just watched these guys talk about it, and they're saying no, it's the same old microzyma that they were looking at 150 years ago. That's the wiggly things that you see in the blood. So I don't think there's anything new being injected into us. So if you want a good video on how the nature of illness and terrain, and this one was really, really well done. These two guys, their father was a terrain expert, but that's another topic for another day. And I'm sure you have a lot of opinions on the whole COVID thing.
If they ask another question, we'll be here for another hour.
No, I know. I don't want to ask you about COVID because that's my favorite topic. It has been for the last 5 years. So I'm slowly not talking about it anymore because it's sort of a dead issue, but maybe not as so. We'll definitely have to have you back. Yes, go ahead.
We skipped over COVID for the most part because once you knew what was happening, so we just skipped over that and was sort of like threw ourselves into Tartaria at that kind of same time. It was very interesting that the Tartarian consciousness sort of really broke during the COVID era, which is interesting as a whole. Percentage of the population rejected COVID and everything it stood for, and then went down the rabbit holes. At the same time, a new consciousness easily and instantly rose to fill in the details. So, it's very interesting how when half the population reject an idea, what then is provoked in its place. But COVID's a whole other body of work that we could talk about.
Well, you're lucky that you didn't immerse yourself because that's all I talked about back in the day. So
it was just another 9/11, another moon landing.
Yes.
In that way.
I agree. All right.
Obviously,
We'll wrap it up. I think I was going to play some Space Invaders music. This doesn't sound... this is the Space Invaders thing that we were talking about earlier.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having us on.
Yes. The pleasure is all mine. You guys are super interesting, and I really appreciate you coming on. I thank Anna for booking us together, and we'll definitely have to reconvene.
Excellent.
Cool. And
wonderful.
I'll watch more of your stuff as well. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great morning, evening, afternoon, or good night.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Tim.
Thank you, everyone who listened. Everyone have a great day.
And feel free to take this audio video that is going to be available probably in the next hour on Fakeotube, fakeotube.com, or you can rip it off YouTube. That takes a couple, like 24 hours or so, but you can take it and put it on your site if you want. That'd be great.
Awesome.
Cheers,
We'd
mate.
love to. We'd love to.
Yeah, it's all yours. All right. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks,
and
Tim.
Campbell of Australia. Autodidactic is your YouTube channel. Are there any other places on the internet to go, or is it mainly YouTube?
Just
we
Tartaria.
No,
Australia.com.
we have a Tartaria Australia site, but it's been very censored and is not moving in any direction. So we tend to just stay on autodidactic.
On YouTube.
Yes.
And you're safe on YouTube? They're not throttling you in any way?
Well, we're not too bad at the moment. We try to stay away from trigger words, so...
I don't. What are you talking about?
Yes, Kelly doesn't. I do. I just do a lot of editing.
I heard Kelly had colorful language, but she sounded like a complete angel tonight.
Yeah.
I know. Didn't I just?
Lady, right?
I know. Anyone else listening to from Tartaria Australia will also be noting that fact, Tim. Thank you very much.
Yes, I thought you were lovely. Lovely. All right. Such a pleasure. It was great talking to you guys. Have a great night, afternoon, or whatever time it is over there. And we'll see you in the future, I'm sure.
All right, Tim.
Cheers,
Wonderful.
mate.
See
All right.
you, mate.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Fakeologist.com/donate. Thanks for joining, and thanks to our guests. Great talks, great hangs. Autodidactic.